Okay, so now we're ready to export our sound, but I actually do want to show you one more quick thing. If you keep bringing in sounds, especially inside of Reaper, you'll notice that it's doing this one thing that I want to show you how to get a hold of, and this is going to be an options preferences. Now, what's happening is whenever you bring it, and when you drag and drop or you import a wave file into Reaper, it's creating a temporary, let's say, working file where in the original location of where the sound file that you dragged in was. And by default, this will send this to wherever you pulled the audio file from. So you could imagine that if you're working from a sound library and you pull the file in, it's going to make a little duplicate temporary file inside of your sound library. And that's actually not very good. So to turn this off, if you open options, preferences, I believe it's inside of general paths, this store all peak caches in alternate path. So this is saying, I want to take all of these temporary files and not put them wherever you feel like. I want to put them in a very particular folder. And I typically make a temporary file on my desktop or something, just backup to keep this stuff. So just click on Store All Peak Caches and then do Browse and find the spot that you want to keep all these temporary files into and click OK. Okay, so that should keep your files under control. And so now I want to export out the file that I've edited. And again, make sure that you have your time markers exactly lined up. And again, if you double click right here and you drag this out, this should perfectly line up. And once you have that, and you make sure that you have that, if you go to File, Render, that'll bring up the render window. And first you need to choose what exactly you want to render out. And you could just leave this at default. Master mix is what we want. Basically anything that we hear inside of our project, we want that to be the audio that renders out. This bounds, however, I'm going to change this to time selection. And that's saying I want to use these two markers that I predetermined to be exactly what renders out. Otherwise, you could leave it an entire project and it would just determine that, but I like to be more precise with this. So once you have time selection, everything else is fine. Give this a file name, and I'll just call this Firecrackle. Wildcards or procedural names you can do. Don't worry about that. Inside of Browse, click that. And this is saying, where do you want to save the file? And I'm going to, for now, just save this to a temporary folder on my desktop, and I'll call this Firecrack. Sure, that's fine. So inside of this folder, it will make this name. Don't worry about much of this stuff, but I do recommend just keeping this default, that default. Where is this? 16-bit. Yeah, 16-bit wave is going to be pretty good across most softwares that you can import this into. So I recommend leaving this default. I know in particular, if you try to turn this up, sometimes you'll get importing issues with audio inside of some game engines like Unreal. Unity can import a lot of other file types, but sometimes it's more picky. So I recommend just having a common file right here. So wave 16-bit, and then we're good to go. And then if I click render one file, that'll finish really quick. Just click close, or you can show an Explorer right there if you want. But I'm just going to find this and double check to make sure that it saved out. So we save that inside of our temp folder, or just find wherever you saved it. Firecrack. Cool. I'm gonna turn looping on just to double check that. You see, you didn't really hear a hiccup. Sometimes you might hear a hiccup depending on what playback program you're using. But it's pretty good, and I think we're good to go, and we're ready to bring this into our game engine.